And Andy was sharing with me earlier, he was at the memorial for Jack Klugman yesterday, another beautiful soul who went on recently. So yeah. And Huell Hauser, yeah. Let's not make a list. So we're exploring this month a book by Marianne Williamson called The Law of Divine Compensation. And last week we talked about some of the elements of it. And one of the nice things about this book is you can sort of pick it up and read any part of it and get a lesson. It's not necessarily linear. But it is, every now and then a book comes out that does a pretty good job of concisely describing some of the principles that we teach. And I would share, I think I said last week, Marianne uses a little bit different languaging than we do in some respects, but essentially it's the same stuff. Truth is truth. So let's look at a couple of things she says. By aligning yourself with thoughts of infinite love for yourself and others, you gain dominion over the lower thought forms of the world. Now, we had that same slide up last week because that's the essential definition of what is the law of divine compensation. By aligning yourself with thoughts of infinite love for yourself and others. You know, if we were to put a little meter on you that would measure how much you did that in the last week, you know, where would the needle lie? You know, we wouldn't use a needle. It would be that's too analog. We'd have a digital readout. It would be very more specific, right? But you know, I often have said this concept in a little bit different context, but it works here too. If before you get in bed, if you had an attitudinal balance scale that you could stand on, that gave you feedback of was your day in terms of your thoughts and feelings overall positive or negative or neutral? You know, which way would you lean? And you could do the same thing in the terms, what is the quality of my thinking today about aligning myself with infinite love for myself and for others? And you might have done a little bit better for yourself than for others, or you might have done a little bit better for others than yourself. I'm guessing that one or two of you in here may have had an evil thought this week. You know, may have had an unloving thought, may have wished someone else ill will in some way, like the person that cut you off on the 405. You know. But really what we're talking about is, you know, can I realize here's what I have to do. I have to realize the value in doing that. Because I've had conversations with folks who say, why should I be loving? That's for suckers. If you're loving, people just walk all over you. They take advantage of you. They cheat you. They steal from you. I said, you know this from experience? Well, no. I've never tried being loving. I was told by others that it wouldn't work. Who told you that? Well, everyone that raised me. You know, they said be nice and loving to your family, but don't trust anybody outside. And when I got that last job, the guy that took me around and showed me the ropes told me who I could trust and who I couldn't. You know, so I depended on him, and it turned out he'd been there 2 days longer than me. Right? So the question is, how have we been influenced to think about this idea? Because I do find that for many people, even those that have been in a metaphysical teaching for a while, when you make a statement like this, are you aligning yourself with thoughts of infinite love for yourself and others? You have to go, well, gee, kind of, sort of, you know, maybe not yesterday. But by doing so, she says, you gain dominion over the lower thought forms of the world. This is an interesting idea. Gain dominion over the lower thought. What does that mean? Right? Well, what it means is, a way of looking at it, a way of illustrating it would be that loving thoughts, powerful, positive, loving thoughts that come from a place of inner realization and inner strength, vibrate at a higher frequency, a finer frequency than fear-based thoughts. And when you get your consciousness vibrating at a higher frequency, that finer frequency, you tend to float above the coarser frequencies that exist below. It doesn't mean you're not in the same world. It means you're noticing the problems rather than owning the problems. And it's hard to describe it other than that unless you experience it. You know, because if your life experience has been being a victim of one thing after another, it's hard to imagine how by merely thinking I can actually change that experience. There must be something more I have to do to protect myself. You only need protection when you're in fear. So my question would be, what are you afraid of? And for most of us today in today's world, you know, it's not exactly the Wild West anymore. We're mostly afraid of being embarrassed, if truth be told. I'm afraid somebody's going to embarrass me or put me down or, you know, tell me they don't like me. Well, what if they don't like you? You know, there's probably a lot of people that don't like you. Now, some of you are going to go out and try to find out who they are. Because one of our basic insecurities leads us to want to be liked, and we find out someone doesn't like us. We remember the old Seinfeld episode where somebody said to George they didn't like him, and who said he didn't like me? And he was obsessive about it because he wanted everyone to like him. You only want everyone to like you if you don't like yourself. That's the truth of that, because when we don't like ourselves, we look for external validation. Remember Sally Field when she got her second Oscar? Oh, you like me, you really like me. Not really, Sally. We just thought you did a good job in that movie. But we don't know whether that one correlates with the other. So our problems, all of our problems, my problems and your problems arise from fear. Well, fear and ignorance. Ignorance is really easy to cure. Ignorance can be cured with information for the most part. You know, ignorance just means I don't know something. But when you tell me what it is, I'm no longer ignorant of it. Then if I continue not to use that information, I'm no longer ignorant, then I'm stupid. So we're ignorant of lots of things. We're ignorant of most things. But as you learn, you learn things, and you're no longer ignorant of it. But you ever know better but not do better? Anyone ever had that experience? Yeah, once. Yeah. Well, that was being stupid. You know. What's the difference between being ignorant and being stupid? You're generally being stupid when you're also afraid. I'm afraid to use this new awareness because either I don't think I deserve it, I don't think it'll work for me, I don't think I am, I think I'm weaker than other people, or whatever the case may be. So when you combine, even though you get the information, if you're still in fear, you can't necessarily use the awareness or the information in a positive way. So the first question we ask is, do I even see this as a possibility? This idea of thinking lovingly, which means I have to let go at the same time of thinking fearfully. And if I become convinced that thinking fearfully is what's keeping me alive or keeping me safe or keeping me protected, then what do I do? Dr. Arlene Bump, my very good friend of mine, says that she calls it, you have to step out on the skinny branches and trust that you'll be held up. Stepping out of the comfort zone, stepping out of what you've come to see as what protects you. Because it doesn't really protect you. What it does is keep you limited. You know, and some of us consider it a win if our lives didn't get any worse today. That's not a win. It's at best a tie. By aligning yourself with thoughts of infinite love for yourself and others, you gain dominion over the lower thought forms of the world. Just try it in a small way. Notice where you're not thinking thoughts of infinite love for yourself. Notice where you're thinking thoughts of putting yourself down. Notice where your inner critic has taken over and is driving the bus. And notice how you can shift out of that. You need an inner adorer in addition to an inner critic. The inner critic's actually a good thing because, when you're being stupid, you need the critic to come up and say, hey, you're being stupid. But you don't need the critic then to continue to criticize. Thanks, critic, you're done. Go back into your little compartment in the back of my mind, and let's bring out the positive folks that can carry us forward. And then you begin to, when you see how that works, you begin to expand out. Try being infinitely loving to people who irritate you. Not that really scare you, but just the ones that are irritating. And you may have some people in your life that irritate you and can be counted on to do that. Here they come. I'm going to be irritated. Matter of fact, I'm irritated before they open their mouth. That's irritating. Right? So try with them, because they're the least threatening. Maybe, hopefully. And what you find is if you can really do it, where you can really think thoughts of infinite love, which includes the feeling tone, that they can do the irritating thing and it won't bother you. See, the key to this is the world doesn't have to change if you do. When you think the world has to change before I'll be happy, that's stupid. Because it ain't going to happen. Not because of your efforts. If the world changes, it's because the world changes. But I've found the world usually doesn't change in such a way as to conform to my desires and expectations. But I can live in that world in a very happy and contented way if I think correctly. So that's the key. That's what we're talking about here. In the beginning of the book, there's a little story about when Marianne was just starting out. She wanted to make a career as a writer and a speaker. So she had some writing that she had done, and she hired a hall in LA and spent $10,000 to set up a speaking engagement with marketing and hiring security and all that. Actually spent more than $10,000. She lost $10,000 on the evening. And her parents came to visit her, and she said to her dad, "Oh, Daddy, I feel so bad. I lost $10,000. It's just, And he goes, "You can absorb the loss." See, how often has you found yourself in a situation where maybe it's financial, maybe it's another kind of loss where you say, "Oh my God, I can't lose," or else. What if you just affirmed, "I can absorb the loss because I trust in the universe"? Not for any clear, linear guarantee, but because I trust in the universe. And if I'm moving in the right direction in terms of my mental and emotional self, that whatever appears to be lost will be recovered. Because that's the way things work. I can absorb the loss. How many things have you been kept from doing that you wanted to do because you were afraid you might lose and you couldn't absorb the loss? So that's a wonderful little saying that's in that first part. This one's tough. Spiritual growth involves giving up the stories of your past so the universe can write a new one. Now, we all love our stories. Don't you love your stories? You have people in your life that you tell your story to, mainly you. You lay in bed at night and tell your story to yourself, waiting for sleep to come. You review all of the things that have been done to you, all of the hurts, all of the slights, all of the betrayals. It's kind of like The Hobbit, only longer. Woe is me. You know, I've said before, one of these days we're going to put them in the bookstore. It's called a martyr patch, a martyr kit. You put a little piece of Velcro here and a little piece of Velcro here. Nobody knows the troubles I've seen. Oh, yes, Dr. Jim, I'd be positive, but you have no idea what I have to deal with. You have no idea how I was treated. You have no idea what I'm going through. You have no idea. And what I'd like to say to you at that point is save your drama for your mama, but that would be inappropriate. See, the thing is, we become convinced that we're bound by our story, that we're defined by it, that we are our experience of life. And in reality, that's not so. We're anything but that. But as long as we convince ourselves and repeat the story over and over, it does continue to define us because it becomes the consciousness through which the new possibility is filtered. And subconsciously, beneath our awareness, we apply that story that's still kept alive, and it limits our capacity. Now, what might that look like? Let's say that 6 months ago you went through a really bad breakup. Maybe it was a divorce. Maybe it was just a really bad relationship where it ended. It was just awful. And you were very, very hurt, felt very betrayed, very angry, very upset, very wounded. And you've probably replayed that. It's in reruns in your head over and over and over. And maybe you've begun to where it's not like 7 times a day. It's down to like 3 times a day. It's been 6 months after all. And somebody shows up in your life and you notice that there's an attraction. There's a little chemistry happening and you become aware of this. And you think, something's going on. And then what happens is that perception, that awareness goes into your subconscious mind and there's something called association. Have I seen anything like this before? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I've seen like this before, right? So it usually goes to the most powerful and most recent experience that you have had. And it's not really the experience, it's how you've interpreted the experience that becomes the factor by which you judge this new possibility. Oh yeah, I've seen this before. The last one started out feeling just like this, and look what happened then. Then you replay it again. And then so that goes through that your subconscious filtering system. It comes up to make a decision saying, get away from me. All men are, all women are, you're probably, whatever, you know. You ever been in a relationship where someone projected their past onto you? You ever not been in a relationship where someone projected their past onto you? Yeah, it's what we do, see? And it's not what happened, it's our story about what happened that makes the difference. Some years ago, a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, some of you were here when the fella Costa from Rwanda came and did a presentation with John Newbill. And he told a story there. Costa goes around the world trying to raise funds for a charity that helps people in what they call the reconciliation process in Rwanda after the genocide they had there in the 90s, where millions of people were killed, one tribe against another. And one of the young men, he has a lot of slides, and one of the young men you see in the slides is a young man named Michel, who now he's about 19. At the time of the presentation, he was about 17. When he was 4, his family was killed by members of the the opposing tribe, and they came in and they killed everyone with machetes. And he was 4. He was hit with a machete right here, and it literally laid his head open. And he was left for dead. About 3 days later, people came in to loot the house. And they saw that this little boy who was so horribly injured was alive. And they took him for medical treatment, and he received medical treatment. Now, Costa met him when he was 16. It happened when he was 4. And he said, when I met him at 16, he was extremely angry and bitter about what had happened to him. And as Costa got to know him a little better, he asked him some questions. It turned out he didn't find out what happened to him until he was 11. Then he got angry. For those 7 years, he didn't know what had happened to him. So see, it wasn't what happened to him. He only became angry when he created the story. When he was told what the story was, and then he made it his own, and he put his own stuff in it, and he became an angry and bitter person, then he went through some processing with Byron Katie, and now he helps others in the reconciliation process. It's not what happened to you. And I doubt you had anything quite as severe as what happened to Michelle happened to you. And yet, we often walk around claiming our wounds. It's not that you didn't get wounded. Matter of fact, the wounding was the least of it. It's the repetition and the emotion as you retell the story to yourself and others over and over, and it becomes something much larger. The law of defined compensation simply says, your life looks like your consciousness. If my consciousness is a consciousness of victimhood, of betrayal, of anger, of feeling less than, my life's got to look like that. And what I will often do is look at my life to justify my story. See, I'm right to think that way of other people because they do betray me. Of course, I don't know that I'm inviting the betrayals. Because how else can I appear sane unless my life makes sense? But you know it works the other way too? If you have a story about love and joy and possibility and that people are essentially good, you have a different experience of life that's like that story. You get to pick the story. And you get to pick the life. Spiritual growth involves giving up the stories of your past so the universe can write a new one. Even your good stories may be too limiting. What if you were starting today with a blank slate? What would your life look like? What would you like to have in your life that isn't in your life? And what are your reasons why it isn't there? What if those reasons weren't there and didn't exist? You'd probably go after what you wanted. And you might get it, you might not. But at least you'd be out in the game, you know. There are no guarantees except as within, so without. One of the most common negative self-concepts we carry, one that underlies many other wrong-minded sentiments, is that we're simply not good enough. That something about us is defective. Now, this usually comes from the influence of other people, you know. And it could be, there's a great cartoon online, if I'd have thought of it, I put it up here. It's a picture of, it says school, and there's a teacher, and there in front of the teacher there's a zebra, a giraffe, an elephant, a rabbit, and a squirrel, or something like that. And the teacher says, okay, to pass this school, you have to be able to reach an apple on the highest branch of the tree. And the giraffe has a big grin on his face. The rest of them are like, See? Maybe you were in a school that didn't know how to bring out your talents. You know, I know when I went to school, this whole thing was, guess what the teacher's thinking? That was it, really. Because you could give a right answer, but if it wasn't the right answer they wanted, it wasn't the right answer. You see? And it just is that is the world we live in. But what if you were never exposed to someone or some group or some program that could elicit from you your true genius? And you come away thinking there's something wrong with you. A story I've told before, when I was in high school, I went to an all-male Catholic college preparatory school. Very kind of elite, but oppressive. Man, oppressive. And there were a few people in the school who were openly artistic. They came out of the closet as artists. And they were just battered by the teachers, I'm not talking about physically, but some of that too. You were much more likely to be locked in your locker over the weekend if you were an artist. And really, because it was more about business and science and linear stuff and all that. So at our 25th high school reunion, and all the high school reunions are stag, we're all at a restaurant bar in Baltimore. And this big, long, stretch white limousine pulls up. Gets everybody's attention. And out of it, the back seat gets this guy with a white suit and a white fedora. Billy Brooks is his name. And he comes in, and he looks around, and he goes up to the bartender and says, "Buy everybody a drink." And he gave us the finger and left. He was one of the artists. And I checked into it a little bit. He'd made some money with his art, He had done very well. I'm not saying that's healthy. I'm just saying it's a sign of what he had to overcome. Because when the subculture around you labels you as deficient, you tend to believe it. And maybe at some point you find out that that's not so and you give up that belief. So the idea I'm not good enough leads to other wrong-headed sentiments. Maybe I don't deserve love. Maybe I don't deserve success. Maybe I don't deserve to be in a creative line of work because I've got penance to do for not being good enough. Very common. And the law of divine compensation, when you approach life that way, says, right you are, here's your experience. You can't do anything else. Forgiveness is what's one of the essential things. There's a chapter in the book on forgiveness. I call forgiveness the metaphysical F word. We forgive then out of self-interest, she says. I forgive you because I want out of my pain. I forgive you so that I can be free of what you did. I see beyond your mistake to the love in you so that I can see beyond the mistake to the love in me, because only then can I have a miracle. See, forgiveness is giving up all hope of a better yesterday. And it's saying also, I don't need a better yesterday to have a greater tomorrow. My future is not based on my past. In the Bible, Jesus says, "Behold, I make all things new." I make all things new. Some of us are in prison in our own mind because we've decided there's something wrong with us, because we agreed with people that didn't know what they were talking about. who covered up their own inadequacies as teachers by making you the scapegoat, or coaches, or parents, or bosses, or friends. If we're not building each other up, we're failing to live up to our role, whatever it is. So when I forgive, I pull the plug on the power I've given my story about you. That's all I'm doing. It doesn't affect you at all. You probably don't even know it. A lot of us need to forgive people that are dead. We're out of our lives completely. And we're forgiving the idea of them. We're actually forgiving ourselves for creating all this crap. It's not their fault that you made a story that you made. I made the story. No matter what happened to me, I made the story. And I make the story I'm making today, and I make the story I'm making tomorrow. It's so critical that we understand that. Because otherwise you feel like remember the old-time pinball machines? You feel like you're one of those metal balls getting knocked around by the flippers of life. God, I wonder what's going to happen to me next. Boy, there's a statement of disempowerment, huh? I wonder what's going to happen to me next. I wonder what's going to happen through me next. I wonder what's going to happen as me next. Nothing happens to you, ever. Nothing has ever happened to you. Everything happens through us and as us. We are complicit in everything. Not from an intentional standpoint, but from making ourselves available to victimhood. Because we didn't know any better. Maybe when you're a kid, it's out of ignorance. When you're an adult, it might be out of something else. I can only have a miracle when I give up all hope of a better yesterday. When I say yesterday should have been different. When I say yesterday should have been different, I'm trapped in prison. Because it can't be, and B, I'm holding myself there. You can respond from ego, ensuring pain, or you can respond from spirit, ensuring miracle. When she's talking about ego here, she's talking about the fear-based structure of the mind that exists when we accept all the stuff that isn't true about us, when we live in fear. I have to ask myself, what am I motivated by? Am I motivated primarily by fear? And there's ways to tell that. Why do you do the stuff you do? Why do you take out the trash? Because I'm afraid the house will stink. Well, the house already stinks. Don't worry about it. How about taking out the trash because I deserve to live in a clean house? Not because I have to take out the trash so it won't stink. That sounds like nothing. That's a huge difference in experience and motivation. Let's just know the truth for our dear Joan right now. She's having a rough time. Najee, will you go sit with Joan? They say that when you're ready to heal, the symptoms will appear. That when you're ready to clear up what's ready to clear up, it'll show up in your life. So don't fight your symptoms. Embrace them. It's a first step in healing when something shows up that needs to be healed. Unhappiness, fear, frustration, anger. When you're angry, you're ready to be healed. When you're frustrated, you're ready to be healed. When you're scared, you're ready to be healed. But buying into the reality of what's behind that doesn't heal it. If I'm creating this feeling in my life, if I'm creating a negative symptom, I have to think away from that. 180 degrees in the other direction. Not respond from my fear-based self, oh my God, here it goes again. But, oh my God, am I really being angry about this? How silly I am today. We take ourselves too seriously. You know? Cemetery's full of serious people. We learned, they say angels can fly because they take themselves lightly. Which is a nice thought. Because when you let go of your baggage, you're lighter. A lot of us are carrying around a lot of stuff that isn't ours to carry. Put it down, sweetheart. Relax. Live your life from love. There's no other way to do it. Stop feeding your mind with stuff that doesn't work. Stop watching the violence. Stop watching the drama. Move toward what works. Move toward the light. The lightness of being, the lightness of joy, the lightness of possibility. If you're not surrounding yourself with uplifting actions and uplifting people, you're going to be dragged into the swamp with everybody else. It's just the way it works. Turn off the TV if it doesn't enliven you. Don't go to a movie that doesn't enliven you. Don't go read a book that doesn't enliven you. We are not here to suffer. We are here to thrive. It talks about right living. As long as we're making money righteously, we're not only receiving a blessing, but also extending a blessing. See, some of us get the wrong-headed idea about money, that the only way to get it is to either cheat people or have too much of it, or whatever the case may be. It's just a facilitating energy. That's all it is. We make stories about it. I always say, rich or poor, it's nice to have money. It's a facilitating energy for what? To give you choice. Who better to have a lot of money than somebody with a good consciousness? Because you'll do good with it. I don't want to have a lot of money. Somebody said, I'll get greedy. I don't think it works that way. I think you're greedy first. Money's a beautiful thing. And a lot of us don't have as much as we'd like because we've decided it isn't a beautiful thing. Money is absolutely pure potential. It becomes whatever you want it to become. It doesn't make you make bad purchases. It doesn't make you do things that aren't good for you. It just is there. What's wrong with that? I want to have as much of every kind of facilitating energy that there is, starting with love. Money goes where it's loved, you know. We experience who we really are and what it is we're meant to do in any moment when we pour love into the universe. Now, sometimes we think, I haven't got any love to give. I need to receive love. And, you know, we've all felt that way. Doesn't work, though. You know, Bible, it says, as you give, so shall you receive. Doesn't say, as you receive, so shall you give. It's kind of like exercise. People say, I'm not going to go to the gym until I'm in shape. You know, we talk about tithing. Well, I'll tithe when I have the money. That's another way of saying I'll never tithe, quite honestly. It's the same idea as saying I'll work out when I'm in shape. You work out to get in shape. You tithe to learn how to give freely. Until I can give freely, I can't receive freely. Tithing is a coercive act to learn how to give, like working out at the gym is a coercive act on your body to get it in shape. No difference. Nothing magic about it. Who needs to tithe? The people that have money problems need to tithe because it solves them. But, it's a personal matter. I was going to tithe what I spent the money on the gym. Marianne says, putting love first means knowing that the universe supports you in creating the good, the holy, and the beautiful. It means knowing that you're on earth for a purpose and that the purpose itself will create opportunities for its accomplishments. We don't get any of that unless we learn to trust. The less I trust, the less I receive. It's scary to trust. But the more you trust, the more perceptive you become. And when someone's out of harmony with that trust, you figure it out pretty quickly. People who are the least trustworthy get bamboozled all the time. Because you shut down. You also, when you don't trust people, you lose the opportunity for a good experience. It's kind of interesting how that works. We used to actually teach police officers in the academy to be trusting. Because we knew the more trusting they were, the more they opened their awareness to anything that was out of harmony with that. But you have to begin by trusting yourself. To use your wisdom and use your love wisely and lovingly. So when you have a choice to make, when you have a decision to make, I'm going to give you two things you can ask yourself, two questions. Is this wise? And is this loving? It needs to be both. So next week we'll do part 3, and the following week Brother Kusala will be here. So thank you and namaste.